Hello and welcome to the English edition of The Voice of Free China, featuring news about China from around the world. A pro-democracy campaigner who fled Hong Kong has told the BBC his life has become more dangerous now because of a bounty offered for his arrest. Nathan Law, who lives in the UK, is among 8 exiled activists wanted by the territory's police. Hong Kong authorities are offering rewards of 1 million Hong Kong dollars for information leading to their capture. Mr. Law said he needed to be more careful about divulging his whereabouts as a result of the bounty. The 8 activists targeted are accused of colluding with foreign forces, a crime that can carry a sentence of life in prison. The offence comes under Hong Kong's draconian security law, which was passed 3 years ago after widespread pro-democracy protests took place in 2019. The UK's Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said the UK would not tolerate any attempts by China to intimidate and silence individuals in the UK and overseas. We call on Beijing to remove the national security law and for Hong Kong authorities to end their targeting of those who stand up for freedom and democracy. Under the national security law, hundreds of pro-democracy campaigners have been arrested and convicted in Hong Kong. Beijing has said that the law is needed to bring stability to the city, but critics say it is designed to squash dissent. The 8 named in this announcement are all based in the UK, the US and Australia, countries which do not have extradition treaties with China. As New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins visited Beijing to promote trade, Xi Jinping has praised the great importance of China's relationship with its friend and partner New Zealand. Speaking after the 2 leaders met in the Chinese capital on Tuesday evening, Xi told reporters through an interpreter, "I myself am attaching great importance to our relations with New Zealand, and China always views New Zealand as a friend and partner. Your visit this time is very meaningful," Xi said, addressing Hipkins. After taking office as Prime Minister, you have stated multiple times that you value China-New Zealand relations and will continue to strengthen cooperation with China. His remarks were reported by the New Zealand Herald and Stuff, 2 New Zealand media outlets that accompanied Hipkins' delegation. China is shoring up its position as the world leader in renewable power and potentially outpacing its own ambitious energy targets, a report has found. China is set to double its capacity and produce 1,200 gigawatts of energy through wind and solar power by 2025, reaching its 2030 goal 5 years ahead of time, according to the report by Global Energy Monitor, a San Francisco-based NGO. It says that as of the first quarter of the year, China's utility-scale solar capacity has reached more than that of the rest of the world combined. The United States envisages a greater partnership with India in the South China Sea, a top US diplomat said on Wednesday. The US and India declared themselves among the closest partners in the world during a state visit to Washington last week by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. China had been at the center of numerous territorial disputes with regional countries, Daniel Kurtenbrink, a senior diplomat for East Asia, said on Wednesday. The US has seen a clear and upward trend of Chinese coercion in the disputed waters, Kurtenbrink told Washington Center for Strategic and International Studies. China tensions over semiconductors began with Trump's administration's trade war and have ratcheted up under President Joe Biden's leadership as Washington looks to undercut Beijing's efforts to build its high-tech industry. The US and the Netherlands are set to deliver a 1-2 punch to China's chip makers by curbing sales of chip-making equipment, including some from Dutch firm ASML, the global leader in the critical process of lithography, according to a new Reuters report. China has urged the Netherlands to not hinder bilateral cooperation in the semiconductor industry and to not abuse export controls, China's Ministry of Commerce said in a statement. Sebastian Lai, the son of imprisoned pro-democracy campaigner, publisher and writer Jimmy Lai, has addressed the United Nations Human Rights Council on Friday. Throughout the 53rd session of the United Nations Human Rights Council session in Geneva, China and Hong Kong have attracted criticism and concern over the ongoing detention and prosecution of Mr. Lai. Sebastian Lai addressed the Council during the interactive dialogue with the UN Special Rapporteur on Rights to Freedom of Assembly and of Association, Clement Voul. Mr. Lai's case was also raised during the session by Tatiana Eatwell, a member of the International Legal Team. Both Sebastian Lai and Ms. Eatwell highlighted the disproportionate sentences that Mr. Lai has faced as a result of his participation in the peaceful protests to mark the commemoration of the Tiananmen Square massacre and as part of the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. Both also raised Mr. Lai's upcoming trial, scheduled for September 2023, under the controversial national security law. Mr. Lai faces life in prison for his work campaigning for democracy in Hong Kong and defending the rights of Hong Kong residents. Both speakers were interrupted by China, who raised objections to the contents of the addresses and asked the president to cut off Mr. Lai and Ms. Eatwell. China alleged that Mr. Lai exaggerated the trials faced by his father and that Ms. Eatwell attacked the political system in China, contrary to the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter. On both occasions, China's objection was overruled and the floor was returned to Mr. Lai and Ms. Eatwell. Pictures of Hollywood star Richard Gere doing yoga next to Prime Minister Modi of India on June the 21st at the UN in New York have gone viral on social media and could be a subtle message to China on Tibet, according to a News9Live.com report. The historic Yoga Day event created a Guinness World Record for seeing the participation of most nationalities in a yoga session. While the special program led by Modi was attended by many eminent personalities, Gere's placement right next to PM Modi assumes greater significance as a subtle message for Beijing. Gere is a well-known supporter of the Tibetan cause and has often called out China for human rights abuses. He is also a longtime friend of the Dalai Lama, Tibet's exiled spiritual leader. In showcasing two recent official visits to the Uyghur region, China sent a chilling message to Uyghurs and their allies. Chinese President Xi Jinping's oppressive policies are correct and Arab countries support them. In an inspection visit to Kashgar and Urumqi, top policy advisor Wang Huning told local officials to completely and accurately implement Xi's policies, according to state-run Xinhua News. Those policies have included more than 6 years of mass detentions, long prison sentences, and forced labor. They have been condemned by the United States as genocide and by the United Nations as potentially crimes against humanity. Shortly after Wang's inspection, a 22-member delegation from the Arab League visited Xinjiang. According to China's foreign ministry, members of the delegation said that Xinjiang's society is harmonious, the economy is prosperous, and Muslims freely exercise their ethnic and religious rights in accordance with the law. Since Britain signed a deal to return Hong Kong to Chinese rule in 1984, plucky human rights lawyer Albert Ho has been at the forefront of the city's burgeoning pro-democracy movement. Over the past 3 decades, he has handled some of the toughest cases and been the go-to lawyer for high-profile human rights cases that others won't touch. But Ho's push for an accountable Chinese regime has put him in the crosshairs of a ruthless crackdown on civil society sparked by a harsh national security law introduced by Beijing in June 2020. Today, 71-year-old Ho is in solitary confinement at Stanley Prison, a maximum security facility, awaiting a trial for allegedly inciting others to subvert state power. Citizens Radio in Hong Kong, founded by veteran activist San Kin-ching in 2005, began as an act of civil disobedience against Hong Kong's public broadcasting laws, which he and fellow activists criticized as overly restrictive. In its early years, the station aired phone-in talk shows where prominent opposition figures sometimes appeared as guests, tapping into a culture of spirited political commentary. But Tsang, nicknamed Bull, said that Citizens Radio had had trouble inviting guests in light of Beijing's tightening grip. Hong Kong's political situation today has fallen off a cliff, Tsang told reporters before the final show, recorded in a cluttered studio within an industrial building. If we invite guests, they may not be able to speak freely because there are so many red lines. Tsang added that the radio station could not pay rent beyond August after its bank account was blocked from receiving donations, and the radio station has since closed down. And that is all today from the English service of the Voice of Free China. Thank you for listening.